All right, so this is Balancing Act Day 1. After you took your test for the previous lab section, I asked everyone to get into this pear deck and answer some questions. Please realize this code is not the one for your class. I've just opened this code for right now to go ahead and go through the slides. But if you go to Schoology to your particular class period, you'll find the code that we used for your class period. So on this first page, it says, what is nitrogen? So let's find out. Right here on the slide, it says use this link to help you answer this question. So I'm going to, oh, you know what? I need to be in a different view. One quick moment. All right, so once you clicked on this link, you were brought to a Britannica Kids page that talked about nitrogen. And so, of course, this is something that you can have read to you if you wish, or you can read through it. And very quickly, I'm going to say that nitrogen is a chemical element. It uses the letter N. It's a gas in the Earth's atmosphere. And the symbol, like I said, is N. Nitrogen is found in these places, and you will care about this because in a moment when we go back to the pear deck, you'll see it's going to ask for 5 locations, 5 places you might find nitrogen. We find nitrogen in the air, in our atmosphere. We find nitrogen in the gases coming outside of volcanoes, in some mines and some mineral springs. And we also find nitrogen in living things in combinations, and we call combinations of atoms compounds. Other nitrogen compounds are going to be found in the atmosphere and rain and soil and seawater, and we can even find nitrogen in meteorites and stars and nebulae. So we have some more facts that we can find about nitrogen, and you can go back and forth and read these. I'll slow down just a moment, but I'm not going to read this out loud. You can pause, read it to yourself, or you can access this by doing your own pear deck. All right. So we've gotten a couple of these answers already. You're looking at the teacher view again right this moment. We had a slide that says name 5 places where nitrogen can be found. And remember, we just read about that on the page that we were on just a moment ago. So if I wanted to see, oh, no responses, of course, because I'm the only one logged in. You, on your pear deck, would write 5 things like the atmosphere, meteorites or stars, gases from volcanoes, some mineral springs, and you might write mines. So we're going to click on. Okay, the periodic table of elements, that's what we're looking at here. Nitrogen is one of the elements. It's number 7 over here. So the symbol you can see is just N, and that is for nitrogen. Anytime 2 atoms join together, they make a molecule. So you want to read this information before moving on. I'm going to encourage you to go through that pear deck on your own, but realize that water is made of 2 atoms of hydrogen, H2. That 2 is telling us there are 2 H's and 1 single O. So you're going to want to remember what those chemical formulas mean because we're going to talk about some things with nitrogen as well. Okay, chemical formula is a way that chemists or other scientists describe a molecule, and it tells you the numbers of atoms that you have. On your pear deck, you can click on these here and here spots to learn more. In our last lab, we learned how carbon moves around in the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide gas. Okay, so if I have CO2, that's carbon dioxide. First, I know the types of atoms, the elements involved. That would be the C and the O. C is carbon, O is oxygen. So if I have 1 molecule of carbon dioxide, it's going to have 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms. And when you're looking at the periodic table, this is just going to help you remember the letters that represent each one of our elements. All right. Remember in our first lab that we were doing in our ecosystems, we tested the amount of nitrites, NO2 nitrites, in our ecosystems. So which atoms would you say are in NO2? That's going to be nitrogen, N, right? Down here, this is nitrogen. If I am not looking at my screen thing. You know what? I think I'm going to click end. I think I'm going to show you end session. I'm going to not share it with anything. I'm going to just share it directly like a slide deck. I just feel like you'll be able to see more things this way. All right, so this is part of the periodic table, and it's just going to tell you the letter that represents the element and help you. C, of course, is carbon. N is nitrogen, and that's what we're going to focus on with this lab. O is oxygen, which we care about a lot. And just for kicks, there are some other ones on here that are nearby on the periodic table. Okay, so again, in the first lab, we tested our tanks, our ecosystems, for the amount of nitrites that were in there. Nitrites, that's NO2. So we have one N and two oxygens. That lower 2 is telling us the number of oxygens, and it makes a molecule kind of like that. Okay, the molecules below are essential to life, and we are going to continue to learn about them, but know that proteins and DNA are both essential to life, and they both require nitrogen. They both have nitrogen in them, so we need nitrogen in our bodies because we need nitrogen to make proteins. And whoops, wrong button, we need nitrogen because we have nitrogen in our DNA as well. All living things need nitrogen. All right, some forms of nitrogen, however, are not very easy for us to use, or we simply cannot use them. So we said that nitrogen gas is 78% of our atmosphere. 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen gas, and it looks like N2. So the thing is there are two nitrogens, right? Those nitrogens actually really do have a triple bond. They have triple bond. They are really held together tightly. They don't want to be broken apart. So they're broken for us. We can't use them when they are stuck together like that. So what we need is we need to fix them so that we can use them. So nitrogen gas can be fixed or changed into different forms. Okay, the forms that nitrogen can turn into, they're going to be nitrates, that's NO3, nitrites, NO2, and ammonia, which is NH3, or ammonium, which is NH4. We're usually going to lump those ammonia and ammoniums together. Okay, all of these molecules, though, if you notice, they have an N. N, 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 N. So these are places that nitrogen can be. So if it's really hard to break these guys apart, and we say we need to fix them to be able to use them, how do we do that? Well, the nitrogen cycle is, it's pretty basic, but it has some big words that are sort of similar. So you just have to be careful about how you're using the words. Make sure you're using the words in the right places. All right, so if we look at this picture, it says find two places that say nitrogen fixation. And remember, if we're fixing that nitrogen, we are changing the bond. We are breaking those two nitrogens apart and changing the bond so that we can use the nitrogen. Okay, we have nitrogen fixation over here on the left, and we have nitrogen fixation over here on the right. So if we look more closely at our figure here, there are two main things that can help us fix nitrogen gas. Nitrogen fixation happens over here by bacteria. We have specific nitrogen fixing bacteria that can break apart those nitrogens. Now also, if I have nitrogen in the air, which I do in the form of nitrogen gas, lightning has enough energy that it can break apart nitrogens. So lightning can also fix nitrogen. So I want you to watch this short little video to understand a little bit more about how bacteria helps change nitrogen so it can be used. If you've been doing the pear deck on your own and you're just watching this video to make sure you didn't miss anything, please skip over this. All right. There are no captions that come directly with this video, so if you are wanting captions, please try to watch the video so that you can turn on the captions on your own in a different format, or check in with me or Mr. Bazan or another teacher to see how to get those captions.
You probably know that the air we breathe is made up of 78% nitrogen. It must be absolutely essential for life, right? Well, absolutely. Nitrogen makes up all living things' DNA, amino acids, proteins, and even enzymes. Nitrogen is really important. Oddly enough, though, we don't get the nitrogen we need from the air. So how do we get it? In this video, we're going to discuss the different types of nitrogen, what they are, and go over the nitrogen cycle. First, let's talk about the four main compounds that go through the nitrogen cycle. N2 is nitrogen gas that makes up most of the atmosphere. NH3 is toxic ammonia. NO2 is toxic nitrite. And NO3 is not very toxic and kind of wonderful nitrate. You've heard the water cycle. It's fairly simple. Water comes down, and then through a couple processes, water goes up. But on the other hand, the nitrogen cycle is a bit more complicated. It's mostly because there's multiple ways for these compounds to get converted between each other. So let's try and break it down and go over it. We'll start with nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas has a triple bond, so it's extremely hard to break. Only a few bacteria have figured out how to break it down. These nitrogen-fixing bacteria take the nitrogen gas and convert it into ammonia. Ammonia can just sit in the soil until it's ready to be absorbed by plants, or nitrifying bacteria can then oxidize the ammonia into nitrites, which is NO2. Nitrite is kind of terrible. It's worthless. It's not super stable. Plants and animals can't use it, but bacteria can. So then more nitrifying bacteria oxidize the nitrites into nitrates. Now we have nitrates, and nitrates are wonderful. They're a very non-toxic form of nitrogen that can be used readily by plants or be denitrified back into nitrogen gas by more bacteria. Plants love nitrates, and they'll slurp that stuff right on up. Then animals will eat the plants and finally get their nitrogen. Of course, that's how we get ours. But it's not over yet. Animals can excrete ammonia in their waste, and when plants and animals die, they decompose back into ammonia. And of course, the cycle is complete. If this video helped you understand the nitrogen cycle just a little bit better, please press that like button and
Hope I have that turned back on, and hopefully you can hear me now. Now we're going to answer some questions based on that video. And so we are looking here. Which organism fixes the nitrogen gas, turns it from nitrogen gas in the air into ammonium in the soil? We have nitrogen in the gas in the air over here, and we have some nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Bacteria is our answer. Bacteria does a whole lot of work for us in the nitrogen cycle. Okay, bacteria is going to fix the nitrogen and break those two nitrogens apart so that we can use an atom of nitrogen in some other format that humans or plants can use. Bacteria in the soil fix and change the nitrogen gas either into ammonia or ammonium. And so that's bacteria again. And then when we change ammonium into a nitrite, notice the ammonium is NH, H4, and we are becoming NO, and it's going to be O2. So we are taking off hydrogens and putting on oxygens. We are nitrifying. This is nitrification. We are nitrifying our ammonium. We are turning the nitrogen and ammonium into a nitrite. Bacteria does that. Okay, more bacteria change the nitrogen from ammonium to nitrites. And again, this is called nitrification. All right. Nitrites are toxic. We can't really use them. Plants can't use them. So we go back to our friends, the bacteria, and say, hey, bacteria, that was close. Can you try again for us? And bacteria is happy to oblige. And so the bacteria tries again and changes nitrite, which is NO2, into nitrate, NO3. Nitrate is the good nitrogen compound. Okay, and another bacteria saves the day and turns those nitrites into nitrates. The bacteria are very important in this whole process. All right, so huge amounts of energy, like energy from lightning, can actually also fix nitrogen gas straight into nitrates. If that happens, it's happening in the air. And when we are fixing our nitrogen with bacteria over here in the soil, that's the other way. So lightning can strike the nitrogen that's in the air, just kind of floating around, and make nitrates. Which type of organism can then take those usable nitrates? Nitrates are the good ones. It's plants. Plants can actually absorb nitrates. They're going to get nitrates in through their roots. And this process is called assimilation. So this is another big word that you can handle. Just you're going to have to pay attention to how it's spelled and how it sounds. Assimilation. So assimilation is the word that basically means plants are using the nitrates. How do animals get their nitrogen? By eating plants. Okay, by eating plants, which is consumption, and we can call this assimilation also. All right, when plants or animals die, think about this. Which organisms break them down and change the nitrogen in them into toxic ammonium? Decomposers do it. We have fungi and bacteria breaking down dead plants and animals. Okay, decomposers. Now, when we're breaking the nitrogen compounds that are in the plants or the animals, when we're breaking those down into ammonium, that process is called ammonification. Turning something into ammonium is ammonification. Turning something over here into nitrite or nitrate is nitrification. Turning something into ammonia or ammonium is ammonification. All right, so it's a cycle. So we know that these nitrates have to go back. Somehow we have to get our nitrogen back into nitrogen gas. Who's going to do it? Of course, it's the bacteria. So we have bacteria that are denitrifying bacteria, and they are going to take the nitrogen from the nitrates, and they are going to break it out and let it get back together so that we have two nitrogens together. Denitrifying bacteria. All right, the cycle can start over again. One final thing, this whole process happens in the water as well, in aquatic systems, so don't forget about that. Okay, nitrogen and nitrogen compounds can dissolve in rainwater and in groundwater and in surface water. Okay, then we can end up with our nitrogen cycle happening in and out of the water as well. All right, so you can go into the Pear Deck and work on this practice, and there should be a nope, there is no exit ticket for day 1. There will be one for day 2, I believe. Thank you so much for watching.